Welcome to episode 7 of our New York-Panama cruise travel series. In this episode, I cruise through the Panama Canal twice and Susan cruises through once. And this happened because on day 1, our cruise ship docked at Colon and Susan spent most of her time on board while I took a ferry through the canal from the Atlantic side to the Pacific side. And then on day 2, the cruise ship itself went through the canal system. So come along with us as we experience the Panama Canal. Our ship arrived at Colon at about 9 a.m. in the morning from Cartagena, and after breakfast, Susan disembarked for a look around. Passengers were warned not to go beyond the shops opposite the cruise terminal for safety reasons. Later on in the day, Susan went to the shops for a coffee. A police guard keeps an eye on things. Colon has a population of about 80,000 and is Panama's second largest city. Meanwhile, I got on a bus to do the Panama Canal tour. I was one of about 150 that did it, and the cost was $200 New Zealand, and I booked it through Royal Caribbean. My tour started with a 2.5-hour bus trip to the small town of Gamboa, which used to have a population of about 4,000, but these days there are only about 400 people there. After boarding our ferry, we passed massive cargo ships which were lining up to go through the canal. Our welcoming ship's guide kicked into high gear with a continuous, blow-by-blow, monotonic, detailed description of the canal operations and its history.
So Stevens, who decided that was the reason why it was too high so they could never go ahead.
The commentary took a welcome break as we lined up for the included lunch, which was basic and rationed. By now we were well into the Calebra Cut, which is 12.6 kilometres long. Construction of the cut started in 1881 and was the greatest engineering feat of its time. It opened on the 20th of May 1913 with more than 100 million cubic metres of material removed, involving some 27,000 tonnes of dynamite. 3 hours after boarding the ferry, and after passing under the Highway 4 bridge, one of the two bridges that links South America to North America, we were at the Mcgill locks, where the action starts. There are 3 lanes. 2 of the lanes are the original ones completed in 1915, and the third new one was completed in May 2016. Needless to say, our ferry and our cruise ship would go through the old locks. The old locks are only 110 feet wide and 1,050 feet long, whereas the new locks are 180 feet wide and 1,400 feet long. This means that nowadays 79% of the world's cargo ships can use the Panama Canal.
So ladies and gentlemen, the sailboat that coming behind us is going to transit with us also.
As you just heard from our guide, we were going to have a very cosy threesome in the locks. Us, a small ferry, and on our heels a tiny sailboat, and behind that a huge cargo ship. I'm speculating that on a small sailboat with no women, there's not a lot to do except eat and drink.
Ladies and gentlemen, we never
290 horsepower electric locomotives, called mules, are used instead of tugs to keep the ships aligned to the lock structures. The canal authorities have about 100 of them, and they cost $2 million US each and have a top speed of 16 kilometres an hour. Getting a cargo ship through the canal is an engineering feat in itself. Meanwhile, we waited with eager anticipation for the ship in front of us to move so that our gates could open to enable us to move into the lock system.
Okay, if you look in front, the gate is open, and they are opening the gate in this moment. And that gate, and all this gate that you want to find around, they are original gates. There is the original gate from the 1900.
With the gates open, we proceeded into the lock. Double gates are installed for safety. We now wait for the water in the lock to drain and the gate to open, thus allowing us to move into Lake Miaflores.
But this is not for our case, because that sound is for the other chamber. They are closing the door in the other chamber. Okay? In the chamber that you point to your right hand side. So for that reason, they are ringing that bell. When they want to open the gate in front of us, they want to do the same. You could take advantage of touching the walls. The meaning of touching the wall, if you married, you want to marry forever and ever. Amen.
Just as well I wasn't married. Our cohort then headed out to the other end of Lake Miaflores, which is a man-made lake, to traverse the last set of gates and make our way out to the Atlantic Ocean. Each of these gates are 20 metres long, 2 metres thick, and are set on hinges. Electric motors power their movement. After passing the Miaflores Visitor Centre, we were on our way, heading to Panama. It suddenly rained and some of us got wet. We made our way toward the city of Panama, then hopped on our bus which took us back to the ship. In all, it was a 12-hour tour. We passed under Highway 1 Bridge, the Pan American Highway, which allows you to drive all the way from the bottom of South America to Alaska. There are thousands of interesting facts about the Panama Canal. Every ship that passes through it pays a toll, and over $1 billion US are collected annually. It cost our cruise ship about $200,000 US to pass through the canal. Hey, who's turning the volume down? And over 1 million vessels have passed through it since it opened in 1914. The millionth ship passed through it in 2010. The next morning, our ship left Colon and made its way to the Catan Locks, which is part of the Panama Canal system, which works like this. Ships arrive at the Gatun Lock, where they're jacked up 85 feet in 3 stages. They then traverse the man-made Gatun Lake, then the Calebra Cut. Then they're dropped to 55 feet above sea level at the Mcgill Lock in 1 stage to man-made Lake Miaflores. And finally, they're dropped to sea level at the Miaflores Lock in 2 stages. In all, it takes about 8 to 10 hours to cross the Panama Canal system. A guest expert gave an excellent shipwide commentary on the history and engineering aspects of the canal.
Is actually considered 2 spans. So, in terms of the actual number of...
You can see the challenges of filming in this kind of environment. Fortunately, I was the only one on the ship that had advanced camera technology to overcome issues like this and get good footage.
Yeah, there we are on the screen there, see that? Yeah, just wave out, and I can control the camera from here, like stills, video, and record, and all those functions.
And do you know where ours is?
It's in the cupboard.
In the cupboard. In the cabin.
In the cabin.
Yeah.
While waiting for ship traffic and lock management, I caught up with friends like Frank and his wife and grandson, who were some of my table tennis buddies.
Buddy played, the other player was, yeah. The 2 guys that won, they said...
Yeah, so we had...
290 horsepower mules pull the ship up to the lock. Meanwhile, there was also action in Lane 3 and also in Lane 2. Most of the passengers were Americans, and they had parents and grandparents who were part of the original lock project. If it weren't for the 77-kilometre long canal, ships would have to sail 15,000 kilometres instead if they want to transit America. The gates of the third lock open and we're free to proceed into Lake Gatun. The canal is a busy place, and in 2017 witnessed the passage of 13,548 vessels carrying 403.8 million tonnes of cargo. It's not uncommon to have traffic jams, so there are lots of ships in the lake waiting for passage. Royal Caribbean has to book between 1 and 2 years in advance, so that their ships are guaranteed passage on their scheduled time. Crossing the lake to the San Pedro Lock took about 4.5 hours. In the meantime, there was lunch and a bit of a walk around. We sailed past Gamboa, where I boarded for my tour the previous day. From the vantage point of our ship, which is 14 stories up, you get a completely different perspective and experience of the canal crossing. We got a great welcome from the tugboat, which then guided us into the San Pedro Lock. Getting ready for the second set of locks. There's even time for a cup of tea and a sit down. Behind the scenes, the team were working hard to get us through the canal. Here's a friendly wave from myself at the San Pedro Lock, and also an attempt at a selfie. With the assistance of the electric mules, we gently snuggle into the lock. At this point we're dropping 33 feet, and you can see the water draining into Lake Miaflores, which is in front of us. There's plenty of action as ships occupy all 3 lanes. Next we wait for the gates to open. The electric mules pull us into Miaflores Lake. The lake is only 2 kilometres long, so in about half an hour we were at the entrance of the Miaflores Lock. The lake and the lock are on the outskirts of Panama City, so you can clearly see its cityscape from there. There's also a visitor centre there, and our fans greeted us enthusiastically. It'd be great if I could understand Spanish.
Yeah, that's right. I don't know whether it's a hotel or what.
No, it's a information centre.
Is it?
Yeah. The vultures provided an interesting distraction, as well as allowing me to show off my Canon SX60, which is just an old cheap point-and-shoot zoom camera. I bought it 9 years ago in 2012 for $500. There were other birds in the area as well. The valves were open and we dropped the remaining few feet to sea level. Then the gates opened and the electric mules guided us into the Pacific Ocean. And so we left Miaflores, had one last look, and received our certificates for the Panama Canal crossing. And I got an additional one because of taking the ferry transit tour. That night we headed out to the Pacific Ocean, and after 2 nights arrived in Punta Arenas in Costa Rica. So see you in the next episode, episode 8.